Welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here with us. Look, today we are taking a fascinating look at the very foundation of building a successful venture. More importantly, we are going to take all that messy business confusion rattling around in your head and transform it into absolute actionable clarity. If you've been spinning your wheels trying to figure out what your next big step should be, well, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to break down some incredibly insightful concepts today that will completely change how you view your own potential.
So let me ask you something. Why is it that so many capable, smart, driven people completely fail to launch a viable business? It's a heavy question, right? And I want to speak directly to the anxiety you might be feeling right now. It is incredibly common to feel stuck or frustrated or honestly just paralyzed before you even take that very first step. You know you have something great to offer, you've got the drive, but the execution, it just isn't happening. Validating that internal struggle is our absolute first step today, because trust me, you are definitely not alone in feeling this way. Okay, let's dive into this. You're likely trapped in one of two very specific mindsets. On one hand, we've got the generalist dilemma. This is when your brain is just overflowing with way too many ideas. You want to do everything, you see opportunities literally everywhere, but you just can't commit to a single path. On the other hand, we have the total opposite, the imposter's dilemma. And this is that sinking, awful feeling that you have absolutely nothing special to offer, that everyone else out there is way more qualified than you are. These are two completely opposing ends of the spectrum, but they are equally paralyzing, because at the end of the day, they both result in you doing absolutely nothing. Section 1. The three-circle model, mapping your viable offer.
To break free from both of those dilemmas, we need a reliable framework. Think of this model like a map. It cuts right through the noise and finds the exact intersection where your true business potential actually lies. Let's break down these three vital circles. Step 1 is skill. This is simply what you are genuinely good at. Maybe it's formal training, years of experience, or just a natural knack you've always had. Step 2 is energy. And this is crucial, folks. It's what you can actually sustain doing for years without feeling resentful, regardless of how good you are at it. Because if it drains you, it won't last, period. Finally, step 3 is market. This means what people are demonstrably willing to pay money to solve or to have. A truly viable offer, it requires the intersection of all three of these components. Not just one, not just two, but all three. Finding that center spot is absolutely worth taking the extra time to figure out honestly.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it perfectly diagnoses what happens when you miss just a single circle. Let's look at the first scenario. Say you have the skill and a market, but you lack the energy for it. Congratulations, you've just built yourself a well-paying prison. You're going to make money for sure, but you will be utterly miserable. Scenario 2, you have the skill and the energy, but there's no market? Well, that stays a hobby. It's fine, but it's definitely not a business. And finally, scenario 3, you have the energy and a market, but you lack the actual skill. That produces mediocre results, which will ultimately erode trust with your customers. You can really see how disastrous and visceral these realities are if you don't lock down all three circles.
Section 2, redefining your true skills, moving beyond formal credentials.
You know, so many highly capable people wildly underestimate their own capabilities simply because they don't have a fancy framed piece of paper hanging on their wall. We need to redefine skill much more broadly here. Expertise isn't just about formal training. It heavily includes pattern recognition that you've built from your own lived experience. Think about a parent who spent years navigating a child's rare medical condition. They have developed real, hard-earned expertise that other parents will gladly pay for. Skill also includes translation ability, the sheer talent to explain a highly complex topic simply. That is a massive skill all on its own, totally separate from just mastering the topic. And finally, process skill. The ability to organize, systematize, or execute reliably is incredibly valuable, completely independent of specific subject matter expertise. Your lived experience is a skill. Don't ever forget that.
Section 3, validate with real people, escaping the assumption trap.
Okay, now that we've broadened our view of skills, we've got to talk about the market. It is dangerously common for people to just falsely assume things like, oh, no one would ever pay for this, or everyone already offers this, without ever actually testing reality. Well, here is a highly actionable, absolutely critical number for you, 10. The only way to test your assumptions against reality is through direct conversations. Not more online research, not mindlessly scrolling through your competitors' offers, but actually talking. Having just 10 direct conversations with your likely audience is the ultimate reality check.
And this brilliantly illustrates the point. 10 direct, real conversations versus 50 hours of market research done entirely inside your own head. Look, we all fall into this trap. It feels so safe to stay hidden behind a keyboard and analyze things to death, right? But those 50 hours of overthinking and scrolling, they only yield assumptions, whereas those 10 real conversations, they yield actual data and genuine, undeniable market validation.
Section 4, niching down is a service. Specificity creates word of mouth.
Once you've finally validated your market, it is incredibly common for new founders to just freeze up. They experience this very real fear that getting hyper-specific with an audience will somehow limit their potential customers and choke their business before it even starts. But I need you to remember this. Niching down is a service, not a limitation. When you make broad claims like, "I help people," you might think you're casting a wide net, but in practice, you actually attract no one. Why? Because absolutely no one feels specifically seen, understood, or catered to. When you try to be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to anyone. So the crucial point is perfectly captured in this pitch right here. I help first-time managers who just got promoted from within their own team build authority without becoming someone their former peers resent. Think about how hyper-specific that is. It instantly attracts the exact perfect client who hears that and thinks, wow, they are talking exactly to me and my specific pain point. And honestly, just as importantly, it repels the wrong clients just as fast. Repelling the wrong audience is a feature of a great business, folks. It is not a bug.
I want to leave you with this provocative question as we wrap things up today. What is the specific problem you solve that people can actually refer their friends for? Remember, true specificity is what makes word of mouth possible in the very first place. A clearly named problem is a problem that people can talk about and actively recommend you for. So go find your overlap of skill, energy, and market. Validate it with 10 real conversations and get hyper-specific about exactly who you serve. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Now get out there and find your sweet spot.